Okay, perfect.
Ooh, I keep doing that by accident.
It's okay.
Okay, I think I'm going to start. That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Data Plus Women London's May event. It's nice to be back and to see you all again. So today's event is focusing on the quantified self. We are currently at a time where it's the easiest to collect data about literally anything, ourselves included. And so just to quickly go over the agenda, we'll be starting with one of our Data Plus Women co-leads, Ellie, who will be talking about the quantified self, giving examples of data that's already being collected and how to get started. And she'll also show how to connect to apps like Garmin, Strava, and Apple Health. Following that, Adam will be speaking about logging and collecting data about food he's been eating using Myfitnesspal, and will even demo his Tableau public viz that he's created using the data to look at patterns in his nutrition. Both speakers will have a Q&A section after their talk, so if you have anything to ask, just stick them into the Q&A, that little button that says Q&A. So yeah, if you're new here, welcome. We're happy to have you all here, and hopefully we can see you at our future events, whether they be virtual, but fingers crossed in person, maybe even this year, who knows? So Data Plus Women is a community and meetup group for women who work in, with, and around data. Our aim is to promote and celebrate the achievements and success of women working in the industry and give them a platform to share their knowledge and experiences. This means absolutely everyone is welcome. That being said, I'd like to introduce my co-leads. So Tuba has been the legend leading this team the longest, and Ellie and I actually joined the team around the same time over a year ago, and we're very happy to have Sarah join this year. So thank you, ladies, for all your hard work. You guys are awesome. And in case you missed it, in the last few events, we have extended our virtual community to LinkedIn. So this LinkedIn group represents not only London, but all of the Data Plus Women chapters globally. So it's a chance to connect with like-minded women around the world. We've also created a code of conduct, so please make sure you have a read. It can be found in the About This Group section on the left of the LinkedIn page. So yeah, we're looking forward to seeing your posts and contributions. And of course, we are always looking for more speakers. So since it looks like we'll be having more virtual events this year, we can be flexible about the time and the day as well. So if you haven't already applied, now could be a really good time, and we'd love to hear from you. So with that, I'd like to give the screen to Ellie and thank her for being here today and helping organize.
Hi, thank you. Let me share my screen and present. So yeah, hi everybody. I'm going to be doing an intro to Quantified Self and then talking about some more fitness related specific Quantified Self. So myself, I've been working in data for quite a while now, quite a few years, and more specifically in Tableau in the last 2 or 3 years. I was at the Information Lab as part of Data School 11, but I am now at Telereal Trillium working as a BI specialist. And as Ivy said, I've been a co-lead at Data Plus Women for over a year now. This is our 2nd year. Very exciting. So I'll be talking about 2 different things, as I've said, an introduction, and then more specifically about sport and health. So first part is Quantified Self. So what exactly is Quantified Self? So the Quantified Self refers both to the cultural phenomenon of self-tracking with technology and to a community of users and makers of self-tracking tools who share an interest in self-knowledge through numbers. I quite liked this quote. However, I know that it says Quantified Self, so therefore numbers, which is what we all love in data. But I also quite like the fact that you can add qualitative aspects on top of your Quantified Self to really tell a story. So whether that's written commentary or the actual analysis itself, it's quite fun to add some things around the story itself. So I kind of think about quantified self in two ways. I think about it as passive or active. So passive data is data that's collected automatically. You might not know that it's collecting. It won't be a manual process. It won't be a kind of necessarily a thing that you're aware of. Of course it can be. So the second one there is Strava or Fitbit. You are actively going on a run or doing some sort of fitness, or your steps, you're walking around all day, but you're actually not entering the data yourself. Your fitness watch or your phone or the app that you're using will actually record that data. Your phones collect a lot of data about you as well, as does things like programs that you use, like Netflix will record what shows you've watched, both to recommend you new shows, but you can actually get that data out the back end as well, so that you can analyze how much time you actually spent on Netflix and other programs, especially in this last year. I mentioned that your phone is collecting data about you. Tableau Tim did a really interesting talk about this back in early March, I think, the Information Lab. There's a couple of his screen grabs. He spent and had a look at the data that his phone was collecting for one day. So you can see that he's got 20 photos. He used an app to collect sleep log. He did some walks, how far he'd walked that day, where he was in the activity. So I think his phone is a Google phone. So that, if you set it up right, can track your location, and you can extract that and do some really fun data with it. So that's all the stuff that you can get from just his phone from just one day. And that's not him necessarily manually collecting that data. It's just happening in the background. He's able to get that usage data from that. And then on the right, I would highly recommend having a look at this talk, because he shows all of the data that you can get from your phone, from a photo. So he has this program which runs in the command line, and you can upload some photos for it, and you can do a batch upload as well. And it will tell you so much information from just one photo. So for example, the date and time, the formatting, the color, what type of things were used, who took it, if you have an ID, and the kind of color breakdown from that as well. So that's really interesting, as well as sort of any chromatic adaptations and stuff. So it's amazing that just this one photo that you randomly took can have so much data behind it that you don't really realize. So that's sort of what I mean by passive data. And then active data is ones that is data that you actively collect and manually take a note of over time. I think one of the best examples of this is the Dear Data project and book by Georgia Lupi and Stephanie Pozovic. This is an incredible book. I had got it for Christmas and was reading it. I've been reading it since, kind of dipping in and out, and it's just so much fun. So they set up a project, and I'll show you some examples in a bit about how they manually collected data each week on a different theme, and they did it a bit differently. So for example, we might use Tableau to display that data. They collected it, whether that's on their phone with notes or Excel. They then drew it out and planned out a kind of more from the design aspect as well, and creatively drew it on postcards and sent them from London to New York and swapped data stories that way. So they did it, as I said, by keeping track on the notes on your phone. But I think one of the methods I've used as well is Google Sheets. They have the Sheets app is actually really good. You can just go on and pop your data in there, and it's, if you set it up properly with the right columns, it's already formatted, so you can just go in and directly connect to Tableau or any other visualization software directly to Google Sheets, and that's pretty awesome to directly and quickly visualize and get the patterns out of your data. Another really great thing about doing that via Google Sheets is that it automatically updates as well. So I'll show you in a bit, but I have a board game kind of tracking of scores and who's winning, and that then will update every time I update the Google Sheets. The Tableau public will update, which is pretty neat. So as the Dear Data 2 did, you can do a manual track of your habits as well. So I mentioned the board game data, but just if you notice you're doing anything, then you can kind of log it, and that's then how you get started at a more active data quantified self. So I'll show you some examples. So this is some stuff I've taken from the Dear Data website. This is them kind of posting each other their postcards for that week. And so these are some of my favorite examples of theirs. So it's just to show that you can literally viz anything about yourself and get an idea and a story of what you're up to. And it might be stuff and patterns that you have absolutely no idea are there. But as soon as you start taking note of them, you realize what you're doing, or things that you come across more frequently that you just haven't realized. So this particular week is about complaints and how much they would complain or other people would complain to them. So on the left, it's also a good example of the different ways that these data can be visualized as well. So on the left, Georgia did musical complaints via musical. So made a different, each row of music is a different topic, and she's then shown the data across it that way. And on the right, Stephanie's then gone for some radar charts. This one, for example, this is a pretty cool week, actually. They looked at the number of doors they went through and what doors they were. So whether this was an internal building door, an outside building door, a lift door, a work door, a restaurant door, like whether someone held it open for them. It's just the amount of data you can collect about such a mundane topic, such as going through a door, was really cool. And as you can see, different ways of visualizing the same theoretical data. And then this last one is about what's the time. So every single time they checked the time, or noted that they were checking the time, how they checked it, whether it was via their watch or their phone, and just building up your data like that, which is really cool. So that's kind of more the kind of more active side of noting it down each time something happens. But what was really interesting as well is that, I mean, the Tableau community is massive, as you all know, or potentially know. And Sarah Bartlett, who is Sarah Loves Data on her blog, she runs an Iron Quest every month, and that's a great way to get involved with different themes of visualizing data. And I don't think it's limited to Tableau, but it might be. But last summer, they did a Quantified Self version of this. And this was amazing. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples here, and they're all from Tableau, I think. But you can find out more on her blog as well for more specific examples. But I just wanted to showcase the different topics that you can do with Quantified Self and different ways of visualizing things to hopefully potentially give you some inspiration to get started on your own. So this one was by Natalie, Petal Power. So this just looks at all of her houseplants, and she's created a data set around that, how often she waters them, whether they need sunlight, where they are in the house, and different information around them, which is pretty neat. This one by Judith Becker, she does some incredible vizzes, very clean, is that in the pandemic, she logged where her money didn't go. So she looked at where she was spending from February through March and April. And this is, I presume, from Monzo or from NatWest, one of the spending accounts she uses. So either you could do it that way, or you can either manually log it, then actively log it, or you can, I think you can do it through Monzo, get a spreadsheet, or just get your CSV data of what you spent and where you spent it, which is a really cool thing as well. Although sharing it via Tableau Public is very public. And then on the right, she's done a viz about where she spent her time during a standard work day. So this is her flat, and she's visualized it like it was in an IKEA store, which is really cool. Kimberly Scott looked at the stamps in her passport. So this is more of a passive data collection. So while she's actively gone to these places, she's clearly had the stamps in her passport, and she's then gone back and collated that data into a data source and has visualized that, which is really neat. So mostly she goes on holidays, but some work trips as well. Michelle looked at how to save lives with giving blood and how many times she's done it, or how many times other people should do it, and where she gives blood, which is quite a neat way, and it's a good way of spreading good messages as well. And then I think this is my last example. Yuta looks at sleeping habits. So whether they sleep better working at the office or working at home, and just the general rhythms of sleep. Presumably this is from Auto Sleep app, which is really cool. So again, more of the passive stuff that you press what time you're going to sleep, and it'll then record kind of your sleeping patterns, and then you get the data afterwards. Oh, one more. So this is, I mentioned earlier that I collected via Google Sheets some data about what board games I play. So I write down what board game it is, and I have different columns. So would have the winning score, the losing score, the comment about it. And so this will update over time. So this bar chart here starts at the top and goes down, the most recent ones, and will infill at the top, and just keeps a good score of who's winning, myself, which is player 1, or my partner who's player 2, and just analyzes some of the details over time. And then as soon as I update it, it will update on Tableau Public, which is pretty neat. This is also another example as well, which I will be going through now, which is the Red January viz that I created based on my running data. So I think primarily used Strava for this, as well as Garmin and Apple Health. This is because I wanted a holistic view of it. But within this, you can see I've got kilometers, step totals, heart rate, I've got the GPS, I've got a map of where I've gone if the activity had GPS. I've imported some photos, added commentary, which is why I was saying I quite liked the fact that because these are data sets that you're creating yourself for the most part, you can add whatever you want to them. So in this case, I added some description of whether that's the comments I write on Strava or some additional data that I've added to just give the story of your quantitative self a bit more of a meaning, a bit more diving into those kind of details. So part 2, this is my kind of quick kind of chat about how you can get started with your fitness data. So why did I decide to dig into health data? I'm generally interested in tracking myself, so I track it all anyway. I use a wristwatch and then often have my phone on me, so can get a more holistic view of my step counts and various information. I use a Garmin watch for running, which is good for looking at pace and heart rate. I then transfer that to Strava, but equally recently I've been using an Apple Watch. So that's for more of my day-to-day steps and other activities like at the gym, now that we're allowed back. As well as I used to use sleep apps and any other information I created. And the reason I looked into collating all of these was that last January, with some other TIL friends, the Information Lab friends, I participated in Red January. So this is running every day to raise awareness that doing 30 minutes of exercise, whether it's walking or running or a fitness class or whatever you like to do, can actually improve your mood and can really boost yourself. So this was a great inspiration to keep tracking the data, was to get a viz at the end of it as well. So it's always just fun to think of that as well. So this is the viz, as I showed you. We've got this is the steps I take throughout the day. And what was pretty cool was that I was able to, through looking at the timeline from my phone, Garmin and various different things, I could isolate the actual activity itself, which is in red here. So I've got that for my steps and the heart rate as well. So how did I get all this information? So from Strava, I had the actual activities, any photos, because I quite like adding some demonstrative information. As well as comments or any stats about whether it was my fastest run or any segment data. From Garmin, I also got the activity, and I got a bit of a better geospatial data fields for the running or the walking that I did. And then from Apple Health, I got my iPhone stats and other apps like, for example, Clue, which is the app for women, Sleep Cycle, and then some of the more Garmin wristwear stuff that syncs up automatically into health. I used Alteryx to bring all these three together. I won't be going through the Alteryx workflow today, but I'll be going through how I actually got the data. But then eventually this was pulled into a Tableau hyperfile. So Strava. So on Strava, you can do it a few ways, I think. You've got a bulk export. Actually, no, Strava is just a bulk export. I think Garmin, you can do it in a few ways. So Strava, you log into your account from which you wish to export the bulk data. You can hover over your name in the top right-hand corner, go to settings and my account, and then this is the scary bit. You have to go to get started under the download or delete your account. There's then like three options, which I'll show you in a minute. You can then request your archive, which will be an email, which will be sent through later. Can take a few hours. But it's also really important that it's the same email address that you have access to access your Strava profile to download it. So this was my account. Under here, I then went to my account and then download or delete your data is here. And then I think the third option is to delete your data, delete your account. So obviously don't press that one. You then request your archive and it'll tell you when it's been received, and then you'll get the email. And this comes through as a data archive. So it's a zipped folder with all the activities in their original format. A folder with all the photos separated out already, which is quite neat. And I think it has the title of the activity, which means that you can link it up really easily with a join. All of the routes created in a GPX format as well, which means that you can turn it into location data. Either you probably could do it through Tableau with the get point or make line, however I did it in Alteryx. And then there is a CSV file which includes all of the posts and comments, all the contacts you've synced to Strava and who's commented on you, any clubs or events that you've done and created, run clubs and stuff. It also has the information in your profile, like what running shoes, your gear that you've used for that run. I don't think I had it on at the time, but you could use that and have a look at what running shoes and your performance per shoe or whatever. And then any of the rest of your relative effort data and a ton of information. Basically, it's often too much information in this bulk thingy, but you can then extract the data that you want to do. Garmin. So you can do this a few different ways, I think. So you can export all uploaded activities as a CSV file, so similarly to the Strava bulk download. Similarly, you sign into your Garmin account, you click on the activities, all activities, and export to CSV. So this will save a list of the file by activity type, and you can then filter the number of activities exported, which has been great. And it then saves it directly to computer rather than via an email. So on your Garmin Connect, this is the home dashboard. You go to activities, and then at the top right, you can see this export CSV. Yeah, as I said, you can filter this. So I think you can filter to just running or just swimming sessions. And then anything you then export is all of it for that specific activity. So you can limit what data you're downloading if you wanted a lighter file. However, you can also export all of the Garmin data through the Account Management Center. So you sign in as you did before, you click you sign into the Account Manager Center, which is a different website. You click export your data over here, and then you can request a data export. So it says here it could take up to 30 days. I think mine took 24 hours. So this one you need to do kind of ahead of the time that you want to build and analyze it. So a download link will be emailed to you within 48 hours usually. Also similarly to the Strava one, this comes in a giant kind of folder. So you can then dissect that with your GPX routes and then a CSV of the activity data. The Apple Health. So I decided to download the Apple Health data because I wanted a more holistic view of every minute of the day. So the Apple Health, I'm sure there's a Google version as well, but the Apple Health really neatly puts it all together. So for all the timeframes of the day as well. And you can then sync up with a really good timestamp of what all the information is. So for this, within the Apple Health app, you click on your account, and very at the bottom, all the way to the bottom, is the export all health data. Then pops up with a pop-up saying, do you want to export this? And then you say export. And then it gives you a few different ways that you can export this, which is quite nice as well. So unlike Strava or Garmin, which is to your email address or via CSV, it gives you a few different ways you can do this. So for example, if you had a Mac, you could do the airdrop, or you could email it to yourself or add it to your Google Drive. Either way, you do that. So I'd collated all this information together, and I decided, because I had a visualization in mind, to put all this information together and work out how I wanted it to look. Yes, I had heart rate. Yes, I had distance and all the activities, but what did I actually want the dashboard to look like? This was really helpful because, as you can see, there's two colors there. The red was all the stuff I had initially and how I roughly wanted it to look. The purple is then any extra information I wanted to analyze. So the actual dashboard has two reports, or the report has two dashboards. One is more of a qualitative front end that you saw, the second is an analytics one, which is looking at all the different metrics against each other. So this was really helpful in terms of what I had, what I wanted to look like, and any aggregations I needed. So for example, you can see with the heart rate I had, I wanted to have the average, the maximum and the minimum. So this then per day or per activity. So then I could get some aggregations going within the data. And then within Strava, I wanted the more social side, so the photos as well. So this is then the final viz. So as with all activity data, you have the dateline as well. So I created a mini calendar for myself. I then had some headline stats, which was the daily average and then the total, which then filtered down every time you clicked on something. I then had some photos for context from Strava. I had my cumulative step count throughout the day, heart rate for the full day, because I wore my watch all day. And I then had some geospatial data as well. And also this is using Mapbox, so I could then color it and theme it to the run every day as well, which is nice. This is then the, as I said, the secondary dashboard, which is the cumulative stats as well. Sorry, not cumulative, some analytical stats as well. So I could click on it and just do a standard scatter plot for different metrics. So yeah, I will now stop that. So I'll leave a summary page of where to go to get stuff. But if anyone had any questions, I would be happy to, or want me to go over anything again. I did do a talk on the second half of this back in March. So if you wanted to look at the Alteryx workflow, feel free to do that. But today is more of like an introduction to Quantified Self and what you can do to hopefully inspire you guys. Any questions?
There is one in the Q&A, so I can just ask it to you. How would you deal with, so this is coming from Amy, sorry. How would you deal with unintentional gaps in data, like forgetting to wear your Fitbit for a day or something?
So I would try and maybe look at your phone data for that. So presumably, whilst you might have forgotten to wear your Fitbit, you probably more likely are less likely to forget your phone. So your phone's in your pocket and you move around. And whilst that would leave a gap, as in it wouldn't be as necessarily as detailed, you could then kind of flag it in the analysis as well, and have it that your pattern of daily steps is still there, for example, but it would just maybe just have a gap, or you'd apply the average. So you could, whatever time period you're looking at, you could say that if there was no data, you would then add in the average for that day. So say you had a list of days with steps and one was missing or null, you could then do a cumulative total and find the average and then just slot that in for whenever there's a null value.
Yeah, makes sense. Perfect. I just, like, for my end, I just wanted to ask, how long did it take you to actually build all of this? Because they look amazing. I love the dashboard and I love that everything is coming together on there. But for me, like, I think I would want to know how long would it take me to actually build something like that for my data?
Sure. So I was doing this throughout January 2020, as in the actual running and walking and exercise classes and stuff. But halfway through January, once I had like a couple of weeks worth of data, I moved into doing an initial export of all the data and into Alteryx. And I think I played around one evening with how to get it all together. And I think it's the Apple Health comes off as an XML file, which is quite nice as well, because you can separate it out using keywords. And that gave me the pattern of what was there and how I could collect it all together, which saved time when I finished to then do a bulk export and just feed it through the workflow. So that probably took, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours to do the workflow. And then I think the actual visualization took 2 days. I was on a back to school week at the Information Lab. So you have like a week of learning in between, and I wanted to develop my story skills, so I had 2 work days basically of working out what I wanted to do with it. But it is a bit more analytical than you might want to do with just general quantified self stuff.
Great.
Awesome.
So everyone should give it a go, I feel like. But yeah, I mean,
yeah, definitely. I mean, even if it's starting off with something like when you go walking, or just we could even do like something I think I saw on Twitter recently. Someone had I found it quite cool. Someone had been to the supermarket and wanted to park in all of the parking spots to see how good they were, to work out which were the good ones to park in. So had done this and collected the data every time he went. So it can take a while to do, but it's as simple as working out which car park spot he'd parked in and noting it down, and then marking it like out of 10. And that, even something as simple as that, is quantified self, which was cool. So yeah, it's really, or even just using some of the Dear Data projects and doing it for yourself is quite cool.
Yeah, I remember when I first joined Tableau, people were talking about quantified self, and I had the chance to watch Adam's conference session before the conference for a dry run. I was so amazed because I didn't really think about collecting my own data and to visualize it to understand what I'm doing, which was very shocking as well. So
yeah,
great.
Sometimes I'm quite surprised by it.
But yeah. We don't have any other questions, so thank you, Ellie.
No,
I think we can move to Adam now.
All right. I will share my screen. There we go. By the way, Ellie, I thought that was an awesome overview of quantified self. So many resources and dashboards out there that I didn't know existed. Really wish I had seen that prior to getting stuck into quantified self stuff myself, actually. So
me too.
Thank you for starting with that. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Adam. I work for Tableau, where I lead a pre-sales team of amazing product experts. I've been at Tableau for the last 5 years or so. I love the product. I love the community, and I especially love talking about concepts like the quantified self, one of my favorite topics, this one particularly. So thanks to the leaders of Data Plus Women for inviting me to share. As Tuba alluded to, this is a topic I often insert into my Tableau conference sessions as part of my intro, because it's a very data relevant way of introducing me, and you can learn a lot about me by looking at my data, obviously. So I have a lot to say about it, actually, a lot of good things. That said, I have to admit, for all my enthusiasm, I'm actually a bit of an amateur when it comes to quantified self, or intermediate at best, probably. But hopefully I'm not alone there. So what I'd love to do is just present my story as how a beginner, just starting off with data more generally, might start to quantify their actions and behaviors and find some interesting things, and maybe give you the confidence to do it too. Okay, so I couldn't speak about what I do with quantified self without talking about what inspired me to dive into it, which was Tableau Tim's session back in 2016. So I think Ellie referenced a session more recently, which might have been like an iteration on this. But back in 2016, I just joined Tableau as a product consultant. It was really early days for me, so I was still learning how to use Tableau, still figuring out how to figure out what a row of data was, how that might affect an average, that sort of thing. And a colleague recommended that I check out a webinar that was about to happen. And it was a session delivered by Tim Nguyen, Tableau Tim. And it was all about how he uses his data to gain insight into how he lives. And what Tim presented was freaking mind-blowing. I was just in awe of what he was doing in the session. I've got a little clip just sort of previewing the type of things he went through, but he did things like share how he got an insight into his Barcelona marathon performance, what music he listens to, and how often, the genre of music that he's likely to listen to based on his listening patterns, and his geodata of travel and exercise across London. Just insane. And I thought, I want to do that with my data. And I want to be able to do it with Tableau. So I decided to undergo a personal project where I'd use data about me to get an insight into my behaviors, but also use that project as a way to gain some of the data skills I would need in my new job. Step 0 was to pick an area to focus on, a source of data, and actually that happened to be pretty easy because it could only ever be about my eating habits. Now, if you don't know me, it's worth noting that I'm a big lover of food, and everybody is, but to a frightening extent, both in volume and frequency, actually. I think anyone who I've worked with in the office, like Sarah and Tuba, can attest to both the volume of food and the frequency with which I eat. Now, to be honest, and this is going back to 2015, it was getting a little out of hand. So in July of that year, I went on a diet. And over the course of that diet, I used an app called Myfitnesspal to keep a food diary. So this is prior to joining Tableau and having any sort of intention on leveraging the data for further analysis, and didn't know what Quantified Self was at all. And by the way, I guess some of you will have used Myfitnesspal before, but if you haven't, it's essentially a calorie counter, which helps you keep track of what you're eating. You can search or scan in your food, and it logs the nutritional value of what you've eaten. And it's something I really needed to just stay on top of my food consumption. So this is very much an active form of tracking. Ellie did a good job of describing the two types. Passive is probably the way you want to go, but in this case, I was quite dedicated and pretty disciplined about this active form of tracking, and so it was there and ready for me to use to undergo this personal project of mine. Now, in terms of the app and in terms of gaining insights from the app, it was pretty limited. Actually, it has some data export options and some visualizations in app, but not really a broader overview, which I would have liked. So essentially, I needed to get some row level data, like down to the macronutrients of what I was logging. And that was difficult to come by the user interface. But what Myfitnesspal did offer was an API, which I didn't know how to leverage at all. But this was my opportunity to pick up some data skills and try to figure it out. Now, these were the technologies on my radar as a new product consultant at Tableau. Surely you know the symbols, but Alteryx, Python, Tableau Prep, and Tableau Desktop. Tableau Prep actually came a bit later, but totally fits into this landscape. Now, I didn't want to dive straight into Python because it was a little scary to me, so I started with Alteryx to see what I could do there to get hold of my data. I'm not sure if Ellie did this in her flow that she mentioned, but I leveraged a specific tool called the download tool, which helped me get hold of the Myfitnesspal data via a URL-based API endpoint to download the data that pertains to my account. By the way, this was, again, as a learning opportunity, the place I learned to appreciate how powerful Alteryx is as a tool. It's sort of thematic of this personal project as well. Now, thanks to trying to overcome the inability to access data, I've got my head around something as awesome as Alteryx. But anyway, the shame was I only had a trial license, and that ran out soon after getting to this point. So what I had done was, for the purpose of this project, was more or less redundant. I could have gone for a corporate license at Tableau because Tableau is a tech partner with Alteryx, but I figured learning a bit of Python would probably be a little faster than building a use case for me to get an Alteryx license based on a personal project around my diet. So I went ahead and took a different approach. So Python. Never wrote a line of Python before. but heard really good things. So after downloading and installing Python and feeling pretty good about how smoothly that download and install process went, I then wandered over to the Myfitnesspal API documentation and noticed this little nugget, which was that while there's a free tier for you to use, you have to apply to be able to use it. Now, I did that, but I never got a response, so sad times. And wasn't really sure what to do after that, but enter my savior, Coddington Bear. So I stumbled across Coddington Bear's post. I don't know who he is, but he's an awesome guy. Thank you. Now, Coddington Bear shared a Myfitnesspal Python library, which meant basically that I could get around that API exclusivity issue by using his library. I'm not sure how he's able to do that for us, but it works. So happy days. Except I was still a Python newbie for sure. So, but despite that, I went through the guide that Coddington Bear put together here. He had some examples on how to use this library. So I went through some tutorials on YouTube on how to get started on Python, as well as this guide on GitHub, and pulled together something that resembled sense from a Python scripting point of view. Now, here's the thing: I'm feeling super vulnerable sharing this code because the sheer inefficiency of the code sort of reveals how big a Python noob I am. But don't worry, if you're kind of impressed or intimidated by this code, then you're probably where I was about 5 years ago when I started with Python. This really is just a combination of YouTubing and following some pre-existing code that existed on Coddington Bear's GitHub page. So don't take this as best practice whatsoever. I'm happy to share this, but this can probably be iterated upon, and you can probably make it better. Please let me know how you can do that. Actually, would love to make this a better script. But it effectively is bunched in two sections. One is where you get the data. So this is where I'm really leveraging the Myfitnesspal data library, where I'm able to make a call for each meal entry based on which meal it was. The way the library is structured is you have to go via each meal. So that'll be breakfast, either breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and whatever extra meals you might have. I had a snack. And then based on those, you could pull it into, well, in theory, you could pull it into some sort of data frame to spit out an output that makes some logical sense from an analytical point of view. However, because this was sort of the extent I could get to, the data was structured like this, which was so not helpful for analysis. So in column A, you're seeing dates, which was a good start. In column B, you're seeing which meal it broke down to. In column C, you're seeing a long string of every food entry within each meal, as well as next to it, every nutritional value associated to that food. So if you look at this last item in row 5, glass of white wine, hey, it's all concatenated with the other entries, and so as well as the nutritional values. So it had sodium, carbs, calories, fat, sugar, protein. It's not really what you want. So this was another challenge, but love a challenge. And again, pushed me to sort of figure out a new tool that came onto the scene, Tableau Prep, at the time. And with Prep, Thankfully, I'm a lot more dangerous. I can figure things out quite a bit faster. So what was required here were several pivot steps and cleaning steps to separate out the strings, pivot them properly, throw in the fact that the library adjusted slightly, so the order to which the macros were spit out by the script changed, and so I had to add another pivot at some point. This is essentially the hard way of doing quantified self, I think, but a really good learning exercise for sure. But thankfully, after putting the data through prep, I was able to access data, which got me closer to a presentable point, which, just for context, again, new to Tableau, learning the products, what we have to do to get certified as product consultants is go through certifications. And one of the certification requirements is to build a dashboard based on a data set of your choosing. So obviously I was going to choose my Myfitnesspal data and produce an output of sorts. And this was my certification dashboard, the silver dashboard that I presented in my sort of assessment internally, and the dashboard I published onto Tableau Public, which the world can see today. So just to go back a step, I'll just dive into the data really quick to show you guys what I can learn from this information. So here I'm in Tableau Desktop, and once I spit out the data from Tableau Prep, there was a sense of euphoria because now I had access to the data, which I hadn't had in a long time of trying. So I started with some of the basic questions like, what have I eaten on various days? And that's a question easily answered in Tableau. This is a yearly breakdown, but looking at every day, I was then able to get a sense of the variance of my calorie intake. And so there is, as you can see, quite a lot of variance. And actually, if I break it down by year, put that there, I get a sense of how that has varied. Those trends have varied over the years as well. Now, the start of my story was at 2015 when I decided to go on my diet. And if we take a look at sort of the average, let's use an average in this case. I decided to restrict my calorie intake to about 1,600 calories, as shown there. Now, I was pretty disciplined here, pretty tidy clusters. One outlier here on the 38th of July, but pretty disciplined all in all. That changed somewhat when I joined Tableau at the beginning of 2016. Suddenly jumped to 2,300 calories in on average. I largely attribute this to a really well-stocked kitchen at Tableau, which again, Sarah and Tuva can attest to. Really hard to stay more disciplined when you've got just an unlimited supply of M&Ms right around the corner from where you work. So a lot more variance, plus the social element of life at Tableau really knocked me off my stride. And actually, if I change this trend line to polynomial, you can get a sense of the fluctuating trend across the variance. You can see that I was very much on a strong mindset with my diet, but it all just it was over by the time I joined Tableau, and has been sort of steadily increasing for a number of years after, until this year, where you can see I've post a year of lockdown. Once again, I've decided I probably just need to make an effort to control my calorie intake. So hopefully, we're only in May at this point, but hopefully I've got a similarly tidy cluster as I did in 2015. Although, by the looks of things already, it's not looking like it will be, but positive thoughts. Anyway, so that gave me the ability to put together a more polished product just to present back to my my assessor, as well as something to publish on my Tableau public site, and for me to use as well to sort of stay on top of my calories. I presented this in terms of how much I should be eating according to this Harris-Benedict equation, which takes into account gender, age, weight, height, and activity level. So simple parameters here to create a recommended calorie intake number, if you like. So according to these figures, it's recommended I eat 2,400-ish calories to sort of maintain homeostasis, which can be, the science can be debated, but that's what this equation spits out. So over the course of this dashboard, you can get a view of my historical calorie intake since records began in 2015. And it's quite interesting to see for strangers, I'm sure, what I've eaten on particular days. So you can see today, I've had lunch only. I've started skipping breakfast. Not sure if that's advised, but that's what I'm doing. I had some chicken, broccoli, and rice for lunch. And what's great now is I can quickly get a sort of a macro breakdown of my helping of chicken there, which is really interesting to see. And on a operational level, actually, before I move on to that, one thing that I often share in my introductions in my Tableau conference sessions is my record calorie intake days, which are fairly obvious outliers here. So one is at the beginning of 2019, when I was tempted to undergo a diet, but decided, no, I'm gonna have 7,468 calories worth of food instead. This was all started by a trip to McDonald's for breakfast, and it all went downhill from there. Another notable day, again in 2019, big year for me, was the 9th of November. It took me a second to figure out what this was, because it's not a birthday and it's not a landmark day, obviously. But just taking a look at what I ate, so things like Shake Shack chicken and bites, brisket, machi balls. What I began to recollect was that this was in Vegas for Tableau Conference 2019, where me and a group of other folks went to the Bacchanal buffet at Caesar's Palace, and I went absolute ham at the buffet, which pretty much explains the high calorie intake. So really interesting to see those in the context of the wider history of days in which I logged. Now, operationally, I'm able to get a sense of how I'm doing over the last 7 days. So this week, I'm doing fairly well. There was one day where I had a little wobble, but what this doesn't actually show as well is my exercise information, which I track through an app on my watch as well. Probably need to blend that in here, but I think I remember this being fairly acceptable as a blip over the course of the week. But just getting a view of my behavior and eating pattern, in general, was just really insightful. I mean, for me, there were certain points when I started where this view would be really peaky. So I'd have a bit of a peak on a Tuesday, which was explained by when I would go out to eat. Tuesday was a takeout day for me. But generally over this wide period of years, now it's a fairly expected story, whereby the work week is pretty disciplined, except for when you get to Friday, when you're wearing your sweatpants at that point, especially if you're working from home, like these days. And then I wanted to get a breakdown into, what I typically eat over the course of each meal over the various days of the week, just to get a sense of, what I was consuming mostly. So if we want to take a look at what I typically eat on a Monday for breakfast, you can go and check that out. So the biggest thing is, the most common thing I'd eat is granola with bananas and Greek yogurt. That was sort of my staple breakfast for a long time at Tableau. I'd come into the office and make myself a bowl of Greek yogurt, bananas, and this granola, which is amazing. Not sure where you can buy it, but it's delicious. And then finally, just a macro breakdown of each food type. So I've searched chicken here just to be able to sense, relative to calories, how calorie efficient my protein intake is somewhat helpful, especially when I'm in a period of my fitness plan where that matters. At this point, it doesn't, but maybe it will, and I'll return to this. But all in all, the overall message I wanted to portray with this dashboard to the public was that it's good to keep everything in moderation, including moderation. So that's my dashboard, and that was my story to getting from relative data novice to this point where, and certainly not the easy way to go in regards to quantified self, but certainly rewarding, albeit challenging. So I wanted to tell that story because hopefully plenty of you are in a position where you're really interested in this topic. You're really interested in data and learning more about your own behaviors through data. Sometimes the app you're using isn't going to just hand you the data that you're looking for, but there's often a way to that data. The tech is out there, the help is out there. Forums like this is a great way to ask questions and advice around how to do it. Also, the resources that Ellie showed at the beginning is a great place to start. And I'd encourage anybody to do it because it's super duper interesting. I'll leave it there. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. I think it was amazing. Like I said, I mean, I was really both terrified and very happy to see that dashboard when I first saw it. So it's good to revisit again now. So we have two questions from Amy. She's asking, how long did the data prep process take? Kudos for having a go at Python. And also, have you used Python for anything else since?
Good questions. So in terms of data prep, this probably should have happened in Python, and I tried to make it happen in Python. So there was a long period of time, months, where I was trying to figure it out, and I just couldn't. In the end, I just did it in Tableau Prep, which took a number of hours. So I've just left it there. So if I started in Prep, the answer is a number of hours. But I'm yet to figure it out in Python. Actually, one of my next steps is to try to put a different version of the script into a script step in Prep, so that there aren't two elements to the flow. Currently, I've got a script that needs to be automated and a Tableau Prep flow to surface the data to this dashboard. But if I could get that all into Tableau Prep, for example, that would probably be more efficient. So that's sort of the next phase of this project. Yeah. The second question, have I used Python since this point? I have. So it's been really rewarding to undergo this project because it's given me the confidence to try out things like Python for other things. I mainly use it to get hold of data for things like demos for my job. I've used it. Some examples are getting stock data. That's an easy one. Yeah, I highly encourage anyone to check it out and try it if they haven't dabbled in Python.
Okay, great, thank you. And then one more from Ellie this time. Do you do this literally every day? Similarly, in this topic, do you just not have the missing days data, or do you ensure you do it every day? Then does the pressure mount to keep this up and still keep it going to get more data, which is the best and worst thing about Quantified Self? I completely agree.
Yeah, so this is very much the hard way to do it, right? Because for one, it's not the passive approach that Ellie mentioned, it's the active approach, which requires discipline until you find a way to automate it. With logging what you eat, I'm not sure there's an easy way to automate how you do that, but the app itself does a lot to make it low lift. So it gives you the ability to select previous things that you've eaten before. Luckily, I follow strong patterns. Again, I learned this through the data. I follow strong patterns, so I get on I went through a avocado egg ham sandwich phase, and I could just log that across every lunch for an entire week, and the app makes it really easy to do that. But it does take some manual effort for sure. That's the nature of actively tracking. But the good news is, because I had done it prior, I was committed to doing it prior to joining Tableau and understanding about what I could do with the data. Getting the data and analyzing it was another reason to keep it up. And that's why I've had such momentum over the course of 5 years. Like, that's a long time to be actively tracking something, I think. And again, every day. So it's actually the data more than the diet that compels me to track what I eat. I mean, you can see from the dashboard, the diet's been long gone for a number of years, but the data remains, because my God, is it cool to be able to take a look into what you're eating. Like, that's really interesting, at least I think. But again, this isn't the easy way to do it. If you can automate, then I would advise that you do. Let me know if there was another part of the question that I missed.
I think that was it. Yeah, so you do it manually, like you bring the data in manually, but then do you update the dashboard automatically, or is it just like, I don't know, once a day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So to be honest, this is something I need to fix, but I'm recently on a change to a Mac, but when I was on my Windows laptop, I just used Windows Task Scheduler to automate my Python script.
Mm-hmm.
And I obviously had Tableau Prep, so I could automate the flow that took the output of that script. So it was hands off in terms of updating the dashboard. That didn't need to be touched. The only thing I was doing was logging what I ate, which, as we've mentioned, is sort of unavoidable in this case. Now that I've moved to a Mac, I don't have Windows Task Scheduler, so I'm finding different options, but I think the best one is actually to move everything into Tableau Prep, into that script step. So then it can just be managed and automated with Tableau Prep, and I won't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, it could be more straightforward. But yeah, I mean, we don't have any other questions, but really thank you both for sharing all the information. I'm sure there's at least one thing that we can get from all the stuff that you've mentioned today to start our journey to Quantified Self. So it was really fun to watch your presentations.
My pleasure.
So because we don't have anything else, I know we still have time. So if anyone wants to come off mute to ask questions, you can let me know via chat or the Q&A. But if not, we thank you for joining today. It was really good to be with you again after a month's break, and hopefully see you at the next event. And for everyone that was here today, we'll be following up with the video link. And I'll see about the slides. We haven't really discussed that, so I don't want to assume we're going to send them, but I'll make sure that I'll include them if it's a go. Yeah, perfect. Thanks and take care. I think stay safe.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Just stop the recording.